All right, so let's kick things off with a bit of a head scratcher, shall we? We've got this pretty flashy item making the rounds, a $5 million Visa Gold card. But here's the catch. It's got Donald Trump's face plastered right on it.
Yeah, that's certainly a statement piece, isn't it?
Yeah, no kidding. And
Yeah.
what makes it even weirder is the timing. This card pops up right as the U.S. stock market takes a massive hit, like a $3.1 trillion drop in value.
Hmm.
Makes you wonder.
Definitely raises an eyebrow or two. I mean, on the one hand, you've got this symbol of, I guess you could say, extravagance, and on the other, you have this huge market shift.
It's a bit of a disconnect,
Yeah,
right?
you could say that.
So the question we're diving into today is whether this is just some crazy coincidence or if there's a deeper connection lurking beneath the surface. And to help us unravel this, we've got a pretty diverse set of sources lined up. We're talking new tariffs hitting countries, left and right reactions from the financial world, and even some pretty strong opinions from big names like Mark Cuban and Richard Branson.
Right.
We're pulling from financial reports, political analysis, social media, all that jazz to try and piece together what signals these events might be sending.
Exactly. Because this deep dive goes way beyond just a shiny piece of plastic and a dip in the Dow. We're going to explore those tariffs, their potential impact, and the political and social fallout that seems to be happening alongside it all.
We're not here to give you all the answers, but to look at these seemingly unrelated events side by side and hopefully gain a more complete understanding of what's really going on.
Okay, so let's start with that initial image that really grabbed our attention. The $5 million Trump Visa card appearing right as the market takes a $3.1 trillion nosedive.
It's a pretty striking juxtaposition, and
Sure.
while we can't say for sure that one caused the other, the timing is definitely, well, interesting to say the least.
For sure. And it feeds into a larger conversation about economic trends priorities.
Yeah.
I mean, what does it say when a gold card like that even exists, right? Right. It speaks to a certain economic climate, a certain set of values that might not align with the experience of everyday Americans who are seeing their retirement savings take a hit.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's shift gears to those tariffs. President Trump recently rolled out a whole bunch of them on goods from various countries. We're talking Canada, Mexico, even the British Indian Ocean territory.
Which is an interesting one considering it mostly just houses a U.S. military base,
Hmm.
not exactly a global trade hub.
Right. What's the logic there? So these tariffs essentially act as taxes on imported goods, which, as go banking rates pointed out, often means higher prices for us consumers.
Exactly. And when it comes to Canada and Mexico, our major trading partners, those tariffs could have ripple effects across all sorts of industries. The impact on the British Indian Ocean territory, though, is less clear.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher there.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a more strategic angle we're not seeing.
Could be. And then you have Mark Cuban's take on all this. He's telling people to stock up on everyday items now because he's predicting that retailers like Walmart are going to hike prices and blame it all on the tariffs.
Right. Sounds about right. Doesn't paint a very rosy picture for our wallets.
No, not really. He's
Yeah.
basically saying brace yourselves for higher costs across the board.
Ugh, all right. Well, on the flip side, Richard Branson has a totally different view on these tariffs. He's saying that real leadership means owning up to your mistakes and fixing them fast, which seems like a pretty clear jab at Trump's policies.
Definitely a call for a course correction. Branson's basically arguing that these tariffs are a policy blunder and that sticking with them could have serious consequences. Like, we could see retaliatory tariffs from other countries, which would really mess up global trade and hurt industries here at home.
Not to mention even higher prices for consumers.
Right. It all adds up to a potential economic slowdown.
And it's not just outsiders raising red flags. Even some folks within the Republican Party are having second thoughts. GOP Senator John Kennedy admitted to having some concerns about these tariffs, even though he voted to keep the emergency powers that let Trump impose them in the first place.
It's a bit of a tightrope walk, isn't it? You've got party loyalty on one side and the economic well-being of your constituents on the other.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how much internal debate is going on behind closed doors about this whole trade war strategy.
Right. It shows that there's not exactly a unified front, even within the president's own party.
And speaking of warnings, we've got billionaire investor Bill Ackman basically urging world leaders to hurry up and make tariff deals with the U.S. Sounds like he's expecting this to be the new normal for a while.
Yeah. It's like he's saying get on board or get left behind. This tariff strategy is here to stay, at least for now, so you better start negotiating.
Oh, so buckle up, I guess.
Uh,
But even with all this doom and gloom about the markets, 24/7 Wall Street is actually highlighting a few tech companies they think could benefit from this whole situation. AMD, Broadcom, CrowdStrike.
It's a reminder that even in times of economic uncertainty, there are always winners and losers. Some companies are actually positioned to thrive in this kind of environment.
Like,
Well, think about it. Tariffs on foreign-made computer chips could mean higher demand for domestic producers like AMD and Broadcom. And with all the trade tensions and geopolitical stuff swirling around, cybersecurity firms like CrowdStrike might see a surge in demand as well.
interesting. So it's not all bad news for everyone.
Nope, definitely not. It's all about recognizing the opportunities that emerge amidst the chaos.
All right, so we've talked about the economic side of things, but the story doesn't end there.
Hmm.
Our sources also reveal a whole bunch of political and social reactions that are unfolding alongside all of this.
Yeah, it's like this whole other layer of complexity on top of the economic stuff, and it really shows how interconnected everything is.
For sure. So let's start with Steve Bannon. He's making a pretty bold prediction saying that if the Democrats win in 2028, President Trump could actually face jail time because of all the legal challenges he's dealing with.
Talk about a bombshell. It just
Wow.
goes to show how polarized things are right now and how much is riding on the outcome of future elections.
Absolutely. Then there's the pardon that was issued to a January 6th defendant who was caught with illegal firearms like army grenades.
Yeah, that's a move that's guaranteed to stir up controversy, especially with all the ongoing investigations and debates about what happened that day.
Right. It really highlights the power of presidential pardons and how they can be used in politically sensitive cases.
Exactly. And it raises questions about accountability and whether pardons like this undermine the rule of law or promote healing and reconciliation. It's a complex issue with strong arguments on both sides.
For sure. And speaking of reactions, some Trump supporters were apparently pretty upset when they saw him golfing with GOP lawmakers. They felt like he was hanging out with the enemy.
Yeah, it's a glimpse into the mindset of a segment of his base. They see those GOP figures as part of the establishment that they've been fighting against.
It shows how loyalty to Trump himself can sometimes trump traditional party allegiances.
Exactly. And it highlights the importance of perceived authenticity in politics. Politicians who are seen as betraying their base, even in seemingly small ways, can face serious backlash.
Then we have this executive order from Trump directing Vice President Vance to get rid of improper ideology from places like the National Zoo. He's concerned about narratives that portray American values as harmful.
That's a pretty broad directive, and it raises questions about what exactly constitutes improper ideology and who gets to decide.
Right. I mean, how do you even begin to implement something like that?
It could lead to a whole lot of scrutiny and potential censorship of educational materials, exhibits, public messaging, all sorts of things.
Yeah, it definitely raises some red flags about freedom of expression and the role of government in shaping public opinion.
Absolutely. Then there's this comment from Howard Lutnick, a Trump appointee, who's suggesting that there's widespread fraud happening within the Social Security disability program.
That's a pretty serious accusation to make without any hard evidence.
Right. But even without proof, a claim like that can do a lot of damage. It erodes public trust in government programs and fuels calls for reform, even if the allegations turn out to be unfounded.
And then there was that whole firestorm about a potential compensation fund for January 6th rioters.
Oh, yeah, people were not happy about that one at all.
Not surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of rewarding people who participated in a violent attack on the Capitol just didn't sit well with a lot of folks.
It really touches a nerve because it raises questions about accountability and whether we're condoning illegal behavior. It goes against the grain of how we typically think about justice.
Then on a lighter note, we've got President Trump facing a copyright lawsuit over his campaign's use of Isaac Hayes' "Hold on, I'm coming" at rallies.
I guess you could say someone wasn't feeling the soul.
Yeah, maybe not. So a federal judge has allowed this lawsuit to move forward, which means there's a chance Trump could be held liable for copyright infringement.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out because there are some gray areas when it comes to using copyrighted music in political campaigns.
Right. There are some exemptions like fair use, but it usually applies to things like commentary or parody, not so much pumping up a crowd at a rally.
Exactly. So the judge must think there's enough merit to the case to let it proceed.
Speaking of musicians with opinions, Neil Young has made it pretty clear how he feels about President Trump calling him the worst president in U.S. history.
Not exactly mincing words there, is he?
Nope, and he's not alone.
Hmm.
It's pretty common for artists and celebrities to use their platform to speak out about political issues.
Right. They have a large audience and often feel a responsibility to speak their minds, and sometimes their words can really resonate with people and influence public discourse.
Absolutely. Okay, so the Daily Beast has an interesting take on these Liberation Day tariffs. They're suggesting that while some of Trump's MAGG base might be on board with his policies, these tariffs could end up being a deal breaker for them.
Yeah, because those tariffs could lead to higher prices for everyday goods, and that kind of economic pain might outweigh their loyalty to Trump.
Right. It's a reminder that economic concerns can sometimes trump even the most deeply held political beliefs.
It's all about priorities, and when people start feeling the pinch in their wallets, their political calculus can change.
Then we had that defeat for a conservative judge in the Wisconsin election, which prompted Steve Bannon to predict that Trump might get impeached. He saw it as a sign of a broader shift in political winds.
It's always risky to read too much into individual election results, though. They can be influenced by all sorts of local factors and don't always reflect national trends.
Right, so Bannon's prediction should be taken with a grain of salt.
Exactly. It's just one interpretation among many.
Elon Musk also chimed in on that Wisconsin election, focusing specifically on the issue of voter ID.
Which is a key concern for many conservatives. They see it as essential for preventing voter fraud and ensuring election integrity.
So for Musk, that aspect of the election seems to outweigh other considerations.
It highlights how different people can focus on different aspects of the same event and draw different conclusions.
Then there's the story of a woman who voted for Trump but now regrets it after losing her job in a government purge.
That's a powerful example of how political decisions can have real-world consequences for everyday people.
It puts a human face on the often abstract world of politics and reminds us that these decisions aren't just happening in some far-off bubble. They affect real lives.
Absolutely. And sometimes those personal stories can be more persuasive than any policy argument.
For sure. And looking back, Liz Cheney had a pretty scathing message for her fellow Republicans. She said that Trump will eventually be gone, but their dishonor will remain.
That's a pretty harsh indictment coming from within his own party. It suggests that she sees their support for Trump as a moral failing that will have lasting consequences.
Yeah, it speaks to the deep divisions within the GOP and the long-term damage that this whole Trump era might have on the party.
It's a reminder that political choices have consequences that can extend far beyond any one election cycle.
Finally, there's a report suggesting that King Charles will witness Donald Trump's true face now that Russia's been officially declared a national security threat to Britain.
It's a reminder that international events can have a big impact on how world leaders view and interact with each other.
Right. And it's interesting to think about how those global dynamics might play out in the relationship between King Charles and Donald Trump.
It adds another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation.
So we've come full circle, haven't we? We started with that image of a $5 million Trump card appearing as the market tank. And we've explored all these different angles, the tariffs, the political battles, the social commentary. It's a lot to take in.
Definitely. And it all paints a pretty complex picture of the economic and political landscape we're navigating.
Exactly. So we leave you with this question. What connections do you see now between these seemingly unrelated events? And what are the long-term implications for our economy and our political system?
Food for thought. We encourage you to keep exploring these issues and drawing your own conclusions.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.